And we're live. It's Monday, November 1st, 2021, 5:04 p.m. Eastern Time in DC and New York and New Haven.
But only those places.
Yeah, I know those are all the same place or something. And also we are not allowed to have fun anymore. But we are allowed to have an entire incredibly indulgent episode that is just about me bringing on two of my biggest nerd friends to talk about Dune, the movie that I don't know why I'm doing this, because literally my entire life for the past week and a half / 14 years has been filled with Dune references because of John. Did I ever tell you guys this? He was elected to be this class speaker for high school. And I still to this day do not know how that happened. No offense to him. He's a very smart, he's a very sweet guy. I love him. But I don't know what they thought he was going to talk about. And he got up and talked the entire time about Dune. He gave his entire graduation speech about Dune.
That is such a powerful move.
Yes. I think it was basically around fear is the mind killer. He maybe is listening and might be logged on to the chat to correct me about these things. I have read Dune. He claims I have not read it because I don't remember it because as well as he does. So anyways, I will be the resident idiot here. But I was really excited about the movie. I liked it a lot. This is kind of perfect that we get to do this day after Halloween, because Kriston and especially Julian are two of the most epic Halloween-ers that I've ever seen in my life. Julian, you and Tom Lee used to spend upwards of 2 months on your costumes. I feel they would often involve electronics, many times contact lenses, sometimes full body makeup. I just feel there was a level of commitment that you don't often see in adult men to Halloween. That was just
I don't interpret that as a compliment.
I love
single adult men.
But anyways, we're not allowed fun anymore. We are allowed to talk to Dune. Welcome, Julian. Welcome, Kriston. It's great to have you guys on.
Good to be on.
Scott, what were you going to say?
I have to really confess at the outset that the only thing I know about Dune was I saw the recent incarnation, but I didn't see the first. Have
you read the book?
Nor have I read the book. So,
wow.
But I did see the movie, the most recent one. So I may not have much to add.
I actually kind of think it would be amazing to find someone to have Scott tell us what Dune is about, having only watched the second movie. Do you guys think that would be mildly entertaining, and then we can kind of riff? I think it would be I just think it would be kind of a very fun Scott,
Yeah, I'm actually curious to hear that.
I know. Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
Wait a second. Is this a trick question? I mean,
no.
It was a movie about it was like Game of Thrones, but instead of dragons, there were worms. That's what I thought. It just seemed like Game of Thrones to me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me that came across, because I remember my kind of first thought as the credits rolled was, well, this was a gorgeous sort of illustration for the book, in the sense that you might have a nice hardcover with illustrated plates, and so I kind of enjoyed it in that in that spirit. But I thought, but gosh, it really it just has to leave out so much. so much of the story isn't really there. And I sort of wondered, would it be intelligible at all? But also I thought, gosh, and they left out all the interesting kind of Game of Thronesy political machinations that are a lot of what is sort of fun about that book. It is a very having actually read the first one again within the last couple of years, and then I just last night started kind of skimming through it again. It's sort of striking that it really is like the first 150 pages of that book are exposition, often rather clunkily delivered. I mean, it is it's kind of impressive that you kind of go, this is a book with a lot of sort of flaws to it, that if the world were not so compelling, it would kind of otherwise be lethal. But it is compulsively readable anyway.
I agree with that. I mean, yeah, I don't know how to. I was very surprised that I thought that the movie was so good on its own. I will also say that after reading the book. The reason David Lynch's movie, Scott, is like so kind of like gets kind of, which was like the early kind of very psychedelic version of Dune that's like made fun of a lot, is because the book is kind of psychedelic. The book reads like there is so much internal monologue, and actually, frankly, like ESP type monologue, but like dialogue between characters that's not happening in intelligible ways that matches spoken dialogue. That like I was always kind of like, how on earth would you make any sense? And they did kind of a nice job, I thought, with the language and like the internal dialogue and things like that in the book. But I was amazed. Yes, I think that what you said, Kriston, what did you think?
It was, I had to kind of remind myself when I was walking out of the theater, like why the spice mattered, which is something that's kind of completely left off. Like it sort of runs the spaceships and it's an important commodity, but like there's this giant backstory that you read over the course of, I don't know, I think the first 200 pages, 100 to 200 pages, and then periodically over I think the rest of the books about the Butlerian Jihad. And this whole other science fiction saga that happens something like 8,000 years before the period of this film Dune. Scott, this is going to blow your mind. There's like this huge war between mankind and artificial intelligence. And as a result of, spoiler alert, they stop using computers. So you don't have like neural networks or even, I guess, just Microsoft surfaces in the future world of Dune. All that stuff is done by kind of wetware computing using this drug spice, which enhances, I guess, your maths. So it's like the whole film is like it's like a sci-fi epic that's like built on the back of this unstated other version of a sci-fi epic about like man versus machines, which is like a wacky thing for a novelist to try to do.
In a way, it's like the Odyssey, right? The Odyssey kind of is constantly referring to an event that it doesn't.
Wait, there's another event in
the Trojan War, the Iliad. So like there's, if you just read the Odyssey, you don't know that there's a whole like previous like story about the Trojan War.
That there's a prequel.
There's a prequel, but like an epic prequel, right? That is the truly an epic thing. And this is what I guess that's what you're suggesting about spice, right? Is that it's kind of alluding to this whole other story.
But like,
right, the reason it's important is just not put in the film.
There's like a one sentence where in one of
in the film.
One of his film strips, they say, without the spice, interstellar travel would be impossible. But they don't really explain why or how that works,
and they don't explain
why there are no computers,
or why their eyes are blue, or why or that there is that it affects your mind. Like they don't explain that at all. They don't explain that it has a drug-like effect to people that are not used to being on it, and that it has the long-term effect of the natives of Dune, the reason their eyes are blue is like the consuming the spice all the time in the air has like basically has this effect of like rendering it changes your eyes. Like that's one like way you know someone is definitely from Dune or not. Or sorry.
Just suggest though that like the movie, like when I said Game of Thrones, I also meant in terms of style. That is, like this movie didn't read as a movie; it read as like a pilot or an episode, and so therefore a lot of the stuff that didn't make sense, kind of like you're in a movie, you expect things to be self-contained. If you think of them as episodes, like it's fine that certain things aren't explained because you expect that they will be explained. And so I felt like that kind of lack of explanation made sense given the format.
You know, one of the things I thought was really nice is that some of the movie was good in that some of the things that weren't explained didn't really feel like they require an explanation. Like the fact that everyone's using swords. Like, that's kind of weird. In the future space, we're all supposed to be using laser guns at each other. But instead, those don't work because of this kind of, what are they called? Holtzman field generators, which is like Dune tech that means that we don't use lasers. It's a swords and sandals kind of fable. But like, it was so beautifully rendered that
I thought they did a great job with those, with the blue and the red. I thought it was like brilliant. Sorry,
it was
like,
great.
That was like when, remember Scott, like when they hit the thing, when they like turn on their field generator and they're like fighting, and then they're flashing blue and red in the fighting.
Certainly an improvement over the Lynch version where everyone looks like a Minecraft character as they're running around in the.
I have to say I couldn't really understand what that was. I assumed it was some kind of force field shield.
Yeah, you got it. It was not a whole lot more than that to get.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't. There's no reason. So that's kind of why I was like, it would be fascinating to like know what Scott thought the movie was about. Like, because, what would you be thinking that red and that blue was? Like, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious that it's some type of like it's coding for either. I think the meaning of it seems like it's to like a naive eye is like that it's coding as like either a force field or some type of like sense, like it's like it like displays hits or like a health sensor or something. Does that make sense? Like it's like right? Like I'm like, oh, he took one hit and like it's like it's like all of a sudden it's red and then it like blinks black to blue and like like, and so but to your point, like who the hell writes who has like, maybe this is like the changing movies like totally so that they're going to just always be serial like TV, but like a 2 hours and 40 minute pilot like about Dune that doesn't even do that much exposition about any of these things. Like what's the next episode or next movie gonna look like?
I think it is radically underrated the extent to which the sort of possibility space of pop culture has been transformed by Wikipedia. I mean, you think about something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, a lot of people have seen, you go and see all of them, and so they get to Avengers or Endgame or whatever it is, and they, hey, I've seen all these, so I can follow what's going on. But that's not everyone. I think these are, and just the kind of the binge TV stuff. I mean, even in theory you can watch it all, but all right, I watched a couple seasons of this ongoing story, and now I want to pick up again. The ability to do these kind of complex, really extended, really interconnected narratives, right? Partly it's, yes, you can get anything on demand, so you can brush up and watch the backstory or whatever. But I think to a significant extent, this stuff works because you can get on the wiki and remind yourself who all these people are and of the plot point from the one you didn't see, and who is this guy in the comics? I mean, I think about the kind of the way WandaVision, and sorry, I'm getting a little off Dune here, right, was playing in a really interesting way with the expectation that the audience is doing this kind of puzzling, like in the spoilers for WandaVision, apologies, but like in the I think
I've never watched it, so please explain what you're talking about.
in the penultimate episode, the character who's been on the show, and you've been suspicious. Everyone who kind of knew the comics is like, oh, is this character actually the witch Agatha Harkness? She's Agnes in the show, but everyone who knows the Scarlet Witch comics is like, oh, this really seems like maybe it's Agatha Harkness, the witch. And then there's this kind of reveal moment,
right,
where she goes, the name's Agatha Harkness, and it's like kind of a beat, like that's supposed to mean something. And of course, internal to the text of that show, it means nothing. But if you've been following online for however many months and you know that there's speculation about that, you go, aha, it is. There's even actually one very early in that series, like episode 3 or 4, where Monica Rambeau is a fascinating shot where she's having a kind of like a shot reverse shot dialogue where she's just come back from being like snapped away by Thanos, comes back, her mother has died in the interim, who is a character in the Captain Marvel movie, and she's going back and forth, shot reverse shot. No, I just fell asleep. My mother was fine. She was coming out of surgery. What do you mean she's dead? And then she turns, and it's the only time they break out of the shot reverse shot. She turns to the desk nurse, but really to camera. And she says, my mother's name is Monica Rambeau. Look her up. Which is kind of like, I mean, they're basically, it's very cheeky, right? What they're doing is like, hey, if you didn't see Captain Marvel or you don't remember it, go to Wikipedia and look up Maria Rambeau, because we're not going to explain who this character was.
You're describing like the role of the writing and the sequencing and signaling to the audience, like Easter eggs, or to the Reddit crew of like things to go and look up, or like things to go down wormholes or like references, right, or like places to seek out more plot line and more story.
So the show kind of assumes, and again, sorry, I veered off from Dune here, but like the show clearly kind of assumes the wiki and also sort of assumes the online culture around media as it's coming out, right? I mean, they do this sort of playful thing where the FBI trying to watch this show is clearly kind of doing a version of what online fans do, trying to puzzle out the mystery. So it's right. It's a show that is made very consciously, right, to work in a sort of social context where you have Wikipedia and you can look all this stuff up, and so they can throw in characters that showed up in a movie and maybe you don't remember, but also they're kind of assuming they can do this sort of playful stuff with the online kind of fan community that's trying to puzzle through this stuff. Anyway, there's a very long-winded way of saying I think this is like a good moment for Dune. Maybe it would be better as a kind of extended series, but I feel like this is a movie that's made kind of on the premise that you will find this really pretty, and then you're going to go and look up what the hell all this stuff means and what's going on.
Well, to that point, Julian, that actually happens in the movie where Paul is like kind of browsing Wikipedia to learn about Arrakis.
The sandworms are 400 meters.
Yeah, right. And I assume we'll get more of that because, well, I mean, I think what makes Dune so rich and important to readers is that it has like this very detailed, very textual history that the narrator and the characters are kind of constantly mining as like pretext for their actions, as lore, as prophecy, and some of that stuff just needs to be stated so that like Scott can kind of get the fuller meaning out of the film.
But yeah,
I just called Scott.
No. But I can I just say what's so interesting here is to see two different kinds of engagement with the movie. Okay, the fans are engaging in it in one way, and you're assuming that other people are also engaging in that way, and they're not. So, like for me, like I really like movies like this. And I like action films. I like these kind of Game of Thronesy kind of things. I like, I'm like this on the Star Wars films. But I like these kinds of films, but I'm not any more curious about it. Like then I just saw it. It was like a cool movie, and then I'll see another. When the next installment comes out, I'll watch it, but not because it's like I've become a fan?
I kind of think that this is, and like the audience is like, please, or sorry, our loyal, lovely, we call them the Greek chorus on the chat, is like over there asking like, please explain the like maybe a little bit more of what you're talking about. So like, can we give some context of like what the book kind of like really briefly, like if we can, like of what, like first of all, what the plot line of the book is in like the most anodyne kind of like really like what happens and like type of thing, and not all of the meta stuff, and then kind of explain like what it means and why it's like a cultural touchstone for so many people. Kriston, I feel like you would be very good at this.
Well, I'll try to do it in like a non-spoilery way, because we are only really talking about part one of the movie. Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that it really kind of does line up with about half of the book, and it's a story that starts with a kind of a political shenanigan. You have the rising House Atreides, who is gaining seemingly politically within the Galactic Empire and represents a threat to Emperor Shaddam the Fourth, or whatever his name is. And so, you know, as a result, the Emperor decides that he's going to sabotage this house. And he takes a contract that belongs to a rival house, the House Harkonnen, a contract that is very valuable and extremely lucrative. It's kind of the like central like defense shipping transit infrastructure, you know, account for basically all of the galaxy, and gives it to House Atreides, knowing that this will put a target immediately on his back and
make the Harkonnens come after him.
Make the Harkonnens come after them. He also, you know, the Emperor also takes steps to further the Harkonnens' development. At the center of the Atreides story, you have Duke Leto and his son, Paul. Paul is, you know, the young prince of this powerful galactic house. He is also the son of a Bene Gesserit witch, which is the kind of Dune version of a sort of Jedi figure. And his being a son is very significant because Bene Gesserit have this kind of eugenic breeding program where they've been only selectively breeding, you know, for many decades, and they don't really allow men to come forward as part of this breeding program. So he's significant as
let him be born and let him be born and be trained in the ways of the Bene Gesserit as a male is like highly significant.
It's not that they never allow men. It's that they wanted an Atreides daughter to be married to Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen.
Okay, yes,
and
there's also that.
Right.
There's like some marriage stuff, but yeah.
So he's therefore by this act of insolence on behalf of Jessica, he becomes a very significant figure among the Bene Gesserit. He's a significant figure for House Atreides. And he's also greeted as a potential messiah figure among the Fremen, who are kind of the native
the
population
Bedouins of the planet.
That's right. You know, which is Dune is supposed to kind of exist within this Middle Eastern, North African context. The religion is derived from Islam. Much of the language is derived from Arabic, and the kind of cultural traditions are Bedouin in practice. And all of that is kind of sort of indirectly there in Dune. I don't think that it had even maybe any Middle Eastern actors, but that's the kind of like third part of the partition of Paul. He's kind of a hero among these three different faiths.
Yeah, and like they show up on Arrakis, and craziness pursues, and assassinations, and running away, and there's all of this kind of like, you know, the other key thing is that like this spice, which is we mentioned before, is like this kind of this is like is all over Arrakis. It's like in the sand. of Arrakis, which is a mostly like just a dune, like it's just a sand-based place where water is like the most precious resource, and spice proliferates. But the rest of the galaxy has plenty of water and needs spice, and Dune is only like it's full of spice and has no water, and so there's kind of like a reverse kind of trading of commodities there, and then like or interesting kind of part of like how the commodity resource network kind of gets set up, and then like just how you survive in this type of raw environment, and like that the spice is both as like a psycho like drug, like an LSD type drug to like to people who are unaccustomed to it, and that it like powers the universe. So like I mean, and then there's like worms, which like are a whole other thing. Yeah, worms. Like, yeah, I just did you like the worm, Scott?
So I just found it impossible to understand how gigantism could evolve given such a resource poor environment.
Well, because I don't know. I'm about to spoil something. But if I well, no.
So number one, I didn't that just struck me as odd. And number two, they seemed too big. Like they just too big. It was too, it was very hard to like think of it as like as a person, like as I don't know.
They were really quite huge. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of when I thought of worms, I did not think that scale.
Okay. Well, fair. But then, I mean, what is the Kevin Bacon movie that like
Tremors?
Tremors.
No.
Or Footloose is the one about the hero. Tremors is the one about the worm.
Yeah, no, but I will say that there's like there's like 8 Kevin Bacon movies that all could just become part. If you could like cut them up, they would actually be a version of Dune that would be completely palatable. But there's
Paul, you are the future of House Atreides, but I want to dance.
It'd be pretty good. Anyway,
watch it.
Yeah, I would totally.
I'd totally watch that.
Yeah, that would be like amazing. Like the 6 degrees of Dune and Kevin Bacon. Sorry, Kriston is like, we're like hurting Kriston's heart right now.
Nobody puts the Maudib in a corner.
Oh my God. So I just think that I just think that the worms were kind of large, but I don't really have a sense. I always think the scale is fucked up in movies though. Like I always think that like things seem like, they'd like zoom out from like the Death Star and I'd be like, whoa, that thing really is as big as a planet. Like, or, like, but I don't know, like it looked like it's one spaceship and now it's like, oh, look, there's one spaceship flying away from a planet type of like thing. And you get this sense of scale. And I think that it's I don't know. What did you guys think? Too big? Like, does it really matter? That's going to change a million times anyway.
I thought they looked great. That sort of multi-tiered lamprey mouth with the sort of countless needle teeth was just a fantastic look. I thought they looked cooler than the Lynch version. But I don't know if I have any deep thoughts about that fact.
Great worms.
Yeah.
A+
Best worms I've seen all year.
Reminds me of a joke that that old joke, like, who's we got worms? Sorry. Anyway. No, never heard that joke. They like when you say like we're gonna go do this, and you turn to the person and you say, who's we got worms? Right. Okay, right. Sorry. Anyway, I'll just take myself away now. Kriston just left.
Wow.
I know.
I have never seen somebody react that badly to a bad joke.
To one of our jokes.
Poorly. That was like he must have such a refined sense of humor.
I know, that's true. But I guess, okay, so I know that everyone's I told you that this episode was going to be self-indulgent. We weren't going to do a ton of explaining, and we're just kind of going to get into it. But like, overall, like, Scott, would you see it again?
Oh, yeah, I actually would. I would definitely watch it again. I've also watched Game of Thrones more than once. And I like to rewatch movies, and especially kind of epic things where I don't understand everything the first time.
Did you? Yeah, I think that. Well, that's interesting. Would you guys? Are you guys? Well, Kriston, have you seen it more than once now?
I have. I was actually fortunate enough to see it a month before anyone else saw it. I was in Paris, and it was showing. I had a nice rainy day. I went to like a megaplex in downtown Paris and watched it. And then I saw it with some friends when my American friends could see it as well.
Cool. What about you, Julian? You see it again?
I'd see it again. I mean, if anything else, if nothing else, I'll probably watch it again before the the second version comes, or the second one comes out. Just to refresh myself. But yeah, no, I mean, it's gorgeous. It seems like, frankly, it's. I think I'm scheming to get people together to play the Dune board game, and throw the film on in the background. So I
Great
want
idea.
At least half.
I want to do
in the
that.
Background.
Is the Dune board game any good?
I don't think I've played this version of it yet. So I don't know, but by reputation,
Kriston's saying it's not good.
No. I'm saying I haven't played it either yet. I haven't, and I'll just head over to Julian when he's ready.
I played an older kind of version of it with slightly different rules. That was sort of okay. But I am assured that this version is more interesting.
Can I ask you three, not only knowledgeable fans, but also seem to be people of excellent judgment. Would you recommend that I see the David Lynch?
That is
version?
A great question.
It is a beautiful mess. It is
right, but would you recommend it in the sense that
I'm not sure I can in good conscience recommend it as a movie. It is very pretty. I would recommend having it on in the background with the volume down and looking at it occasionally.
Whoa, that's a rousing. That sounds like some Rotten Tomatoes, Kriston.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of film for when you like get a terrible cold and you're gonna plan to fall asleep while you're watching something horizontally on the couch. This is like a top tier sick day candidate.
That's just some
it's
functional,
worth it for there's
functional recommendations.
Very, very specific scenes kind of are worth watching. The fear is the mind kill, the litany against fear scene where she's doing the gum jabbar with Paul and the pain box, and just the stuff Harkonnen just absolutely chewing the scenery, and like Brad Dourif as his ridiculously eyebrowed mentat are just kind of hilarious and fun to watch. And the whole my Baron, you are so beautiful, as he like drains his pustules, are just kind of wonderful little
I'm
iconic
just gonna
moments.
Simplify this for you. Just don't do this, Scott. Like, just don't unless you are. It seems like to me, unless you are like near unconscious or missing sight in one eye, don't bother putting on Dune.
I would say there are half a dozen better David Lynch movies that I would urge you to watch first.
I take this to be the form of the recommendation. If you get COVID, you can watch it.
Definitely.
That's that we would call that a hypothetical imperative in the moral philosophy business. But
Michael McKenna.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I love the dorkiness of your question. So please
Yes.
go ahead and ask it.
Yes. How much does Star Wars owe to Dune, and is that an actionable amount for the George Herbert estate? I ask this because when I first saw Star Wars and the droids are climbing over the ridge and there's a giant skeleton in the background, I say, oh, this planet has sandworms.
Interesting. What do you think?
Quite a bit. I mean, a fair amount. I mean, Tatooine is pretty clearly. Oh, but Tatooine has 2 suns instead of 2 moons. But a lot of the aesthetic is. But I mean, Star Wars is such a kind of pastiche of old samurai movies and John Ford movies, and so yeah, Dune is in the mix too. But I think it's it's one of those things where it's like such sweeping and diverse copyright infringement that no single claimant can really can really get any purchase.
I'll stand up for Ralph McQuarrie here, and I'd say that I think his vision of kind of an entire galaxy stuck in like stagflation really sings out in Star Wars. Like everything just doesn't work. It's broken down. Like the market is depressed. It's all just kind of sunk. And that's not something that you see in Dune or even a lot of, I think, film sci-fi before Star Wars, just the sense that there's like an economic logic to the universe too. In Dune, it's just like, tremendous gleaming, it's incredible. It's just fantastic. And that's great. But I really love Ralph McQuarrie's version where everything is kind of like, eh.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of, I think that is, I think that's right. Mateo has disappeared, but he asked, he asks, and now I'm curious, are you guys James Bond fans?
I mean,
I'm like interested in the
Venn
diagram between people who really like Dune and people who are really enthusiastic about James Bond and Ian Fleming. I
enjoy a good James Bond movie probably as much as the next fella, but I don't know if I'd call myself like an extraordinary fan. I haven't seen the new one yet. I will probably wait for it to come out on streaming before I watch it, but I probably will watch it eventually.
Yeah. Are you a James Bond fan, Scott?
I love action films, but I think James Bond films are always mediocre, and they are a perpetual disappointment. So if you go in with the I don't expect anything from this, then it's enjoyable. But other than that, I find there's so much interesting things they could do. I have to say that the last couple have been different and been more. Daniel Craig is just a much more complex actor and figure, but other than that, nah.
Susan, nice to see you. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hey. Okay, so the basic, what was your favorite scene? So I get to learn something about, what was in the visual field and a little bit about the storyline and something about
That's
character.
a great question.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I thought that the photography was so amazing in this film. I think I could like watch like a super clip of just people going through entrances, ships landing. Yeah, that scene where there's like a kind of like a not a red carpet but a green hexagonal carpet rollout on the Emperor's military planet where they go and see the Sardaukar forces.
So something Secundus, yeah.
Yeah, just anytime there was like a landing and a lot of diplomats filing out on the tarmac was just tremendous stuff. Yeah,
I was going to say the handoff when the Imperial sort of Harold arrives to. I was just sort of. I don't think it's even in the book. It's kind of negligible narrative importance, but it's just really gorgeous. And then the massed ranks behind them start chanting Atreides. I enjoyed a lot. Seeing the ornithopters take off for the first time. I enjoyed the hell out of. I think those are
I thought the ornithopters were
really
great.
well done.
I really liked the scene at the very end where we finally got to see someone riding the sandworm. Like, even though it was like kind of just like out in the distance, but there was like, I don't know. I'm like, makes me excited for the next couple of movies.
I enjoyed the Brando homage with Stellan Skarsgård kind of coming up out of the. They did it twice, right? The first time you see him, he's doing the Kurtz. And then kind of rising from the goop later. So I enjoyed those moments, and just him floating.
Nice call.
And again, sort of chewing the scenery. Substantially less than his predecessor from the Lynch version, but
it's true.
But all the same, cool.
There's some sweeping kind of desertscapes that made me think back to the earlier question about Star Wars, and I was thinking, actually Rogue One really does owe a lot to Dune. Rogue One has like kind of a story about like a religious uprising on a planet being like mined for its resources. Coming like so late as Rogue One did, it seems like even more naked to tell a new story that goes back before Star Wars to rip off Dune. But I liked. I gotta find where they find those shots of the desert, because it's just those gorgeous lunar moonscapes on Earth are like stunning.
Yeah. Scott, what did you think? I don't know.
I like that. I have to say everything that everyone just mentioned really was striking to me, and it was bizarrely, for a desert movie, it was very lush, and like I agree. The choreography of people, they did private spaces. They did fight scenes well. I mean, it was really just a terrific job.
So, like, if you had to name one, so like the movie stands for a lot of different things. I think, and I like Kriston, we kind of like gave the plot of like how we got to like the beginning of Dune and everything, but we didn't really get to like why it's so significant in the culture and like a lot of the themes that like make it so significant kind of made it such a huge deal and give it such a cult following. And like, why do you think, what are the main themes that kind of come out of the book that like make it such a cult following?
Well, I think that I read a piece by Roxana Hadidi in Vulture, and it was about like Frank Herbert's use of Islam and what he did well and what he didn't do well, and what the movies did well and didn't do well. And I thought her assessment was really smart, and she kind of gives Herbert a lot of credit for mining Islam for themes, mining Middle Eastern and Northern African for themes, but in this kind of reverent way, like in a very detailed way. And that, I think, was responsible for why it was really grabbed people. Like, it is like this big and very ornate universe. It's a powerful bit of world building with a lot of familiar details, without, I think, veering off a very narrow course into Orientalism. So I think that's kind of that, to me, it seems like the one of the reasons it just had the biggest reach, that just kind of sweeping desert landscape of a story.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's a big part of it, I think, is the world building. It really feels like a richly realized world with lots of stuff going on in the background. I think the kind of the complexity of the sort of the political machinations. I mean, the the kind of the standard comparison point for that is Game of Thrones now, but this is decades before that, and I think there's a level of the sort of the complexity of the political intrigue that was unusual in science fiction of the era. Maybe it's less extraordinary now. I think the vision of a really kind of human future in that there aren't computers, there aren't AIs, and the substitute for that is this vision of a future where humanity has, through some combination of eugenics and sort of intensive mental training, brought out. You get the Mentat and the Bene Gesserit are kind of weird gender divergent versions of this. Most of the I think all the Mentat we see in the book and the movie are male. The Bene Gesserit are explicitly sort of a female order, but they have both, in varying ways, sort of trained themselves to have these kind of extraordinary mental powers. The Mentat sort of computationally, and the Bene Gesserit, I guess, in terms of, also computation in a sense, but in terms of incredible sensitivity to nuances of body language and vocal inflection. To the point where they can kind of harness this to command people by sort of reading someone and then using the right vocal inflection. The idea of ecology. This is a a sort of series where the planet is itself a kind of central character, and there's this sort of well thought through picture of, well, not just how does the political intrigues among the humans play out, but what is their relationship to the ecosystem? And then, of course, right, the sort of the appealing psychedelic. David Herbert really was, into psychedelic mushrooms, and the blue of the psilocybin mushroom is where you got the blue of the Fremenage. So I think, certainly, especially in the kind of the context of the 60s, this the ecological mindset, the very richly realized world, and the sort of psychedelic element, and this kind of aspirational version of the sort of outer frontiers of human potential are really sort of exciting, especially again from the kind of the context of a sort of 60s culture.
That was those were both incredibly intellectual and academic answers, and I was literally basically thinking that you were going to. I was like, fear is the mind killer is like such a cool thing to say to like a 13-year-old when you're also 13. I don't know, that like there are just like the litany when you are like a scared kid, like the litany is like a very strong, like, I don't know, it's like a very profound kind of Zen, and like you're right, like not just Zen, but like not Eastern, but like in the sense of like kind of, but a very it is a very kind of accepting your circumstances, and then like not letting the adrenaline control your reaction to them, type of thing. And I thought that those were like, I kind of think one of the reasons that it was just so powerful is all of the things that you guys listed, but like it kind of had some great memes. Like it kind of has some good takeaways, right? It has like these giant sandworms. It has like the spice must flow. Like really, it has some good lines. It has like good lines.
The black box. The black box. The pain box. Yeah, the pain box is a great meme. It's funny, when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, that's where that meme's from. Which is, of course, the way movies are meant to be experienced.
Last question also from Mateo, who had to go do homework apparently, but asks what you think explains the particular relationship between sci-fi and nerd culture, and why that genre inspires kind of a certain type of nerd, and why not say, as he says, romance novels, which I kind of think is like a fascinating place to end, because maybe we'll do a movie night again and bring people on to talk about a new movie that's come out, or maybe an old movie. But it's a good question. Like, why do we have such a rich, I also don't want to like confuse sci-fi and fantasy if someone like is going to like send me a real box of pain in the mail if I do that. Like I'm very afraid. But what do you guys think? Like why? I'm also kind of curious. Like, you don't have overlap into James Bond, which definitely has like one type of thing, and there's one type of nerd that does that. You do have overlap into Marvel, Star Wars, but also Star Trek, right? Kriston, you watch Star Trek.
I watch a little Star Trek. I think it's the same impulse that drives art, right? It's like a dissatisfaction with the existing world, but it seems like a different kind of funnel for creativity. You know, I guess all art responds to that kind of fundamental desire to look at a series of problems or states or interactions and just question that and pose like a different way of looking at those things. And you know, science fiction is kind of the more orderly bound channel for that creative impulse. Like most good sci-fi really does have like a built world in which they invert or reverse or flip a couple of levers and let the story flow from there. And that is to me, I think, a very orderly way of looking at the world. And it's kind of a logic game, or like a series of logic games drives a lot of science fiction.
Imagine you change one thing and what follows from that. And yeah, I think it's a lot of it is the enjoyment of the fruitfulness of playing out. Okay, what if we change this? What does society look like if?
The joys of counterfactual reasoning.
Right. But very creative. I mean, it's very different from making an abstract painting, but I think it still derives from that fundamental need to change the world around us.
Yeah, to have something cohesive. I mean, this is like what you said, Kriston, about like the world building being so incredible, right? And like it's one of the things that we all kind of drives people crazy. It at least drives me totally crazy in Harry Potter, is like the like, have you guys, sorry, John like loves reading Eliezer Yudkowsky's like the rationality of Harry Potter or something. It's like an alternative rational universe for Harry Potter, in which like if you're allowed to like flash in and out of Hogwarts magically, then everyone can do it and not just one person, because magically like they have like there's certain types of rules of the universe that appear in the first episode, and then there are exceptions to them continuously, and they don't make sense if you kind of like, for instance, if there were all of these ways to like apparate into Hogwarts, like why would not the evil people use them to get into Hogwarts? And like these types of basic types of kind of inconsistencies in the world.
I mean, that one, I think that's one of the rare ones that I think the books at least explain. There's some kind of warding system to prevent people from doing that. But yeah, Harry Potter does not stand a whole lot of thinking about the details of how anything works, or how it interfaces with the real world. And I always thought it was very strange I mean, it's sort of left in the background in the main Harry Potter books, and they did these sort of Fantastic Beasts things where they sort of more explicitly kind of bump up the wizarding world to like this sort of impending World War II. And you do start going, hey, why didn't all these wizards, do anything about that?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. But, Kriston, any last words about internally consistent worlds?
I wonder whether fans and casual viewers, like the Julians and the Scotts, will both appreciate the movie the same way by the end of the sequence. As I understand it, he's going to do one more movie, and that's the end of Dune. But it might be a trilogy and incorporate some of the material from the later sequels, something like that. But by the time this movie is done, like it would be quite an incredible feat to satisfy like the true readers, the people who like have the Wikipedia open, could possibly edit it, and the people who are there for, great cinematography and a cool score and a good movie. But like after episode 1, I thought they were halfway there.
It's a good question. And we keep making the Game of Thrones reference. And Scott, you said you watched that too, but did you like the end of Game of Thrones?
Hated it.
We don't know how Game of Thrones ends.
I was to say the biggest fail of anything. It's like the Hindenburg of failures. And I started watching the beginning. And then like I just couldn't even go anywhere near season 7. It was just really painful. I will say that. So I'm old enough to remember when the audience was thought not to have any memory from week to week. So all TV shows had to be self-contained because you couldn't assume that anybody. And so then what really changed was in the early 1980s, Hill Street Blues and certain shows like that introduced this idea of continuity, that people would actually remember, and there'd be an audience that would go week to week. And this was incredible, like the kind of the order of sophistication that you can have when you can actually cross-reference and things like that. And then I was just thinking about like that's what's happening now with movies, right? Is that like the serial nature of them is becoming more and more obvious in the ways in which we used to think that movies needed to be self-contained, just like TV shows needed to be self-contained. But that feels like that's no longer the.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great point. I don't know. There's just some really huge changes in the medium, and then I think it's also based around. And you might know more about this, Kriston, but like I think it's also based around like the ad models and things like that. Like I think that there was like the idea of standalone episodes is the idea that you could constantly be bringing in new people, and if you left people behind, you weren't going to have new people that were brought in because you couldn't replay. There were no reruns. Right. Like what's a rerun? Like I don't know. Like so like the idea that you couldn't like catch up if you lost your place is like exactly why we now watch TV with Wikipedia open. Like, I mean, it's kind of like, right? Like you can just deepen your entire intellectual engagement with everything you're watching. And like anything you feel like you don't, right? Like it's so much richer.
I mean, the model used to be, look, there are basically 3 networks. There's a handful of other channels. There's 3 networks. Maybe you've got a dozen channels available total. So people are flipping around. You've got TV. So there's a fairly limited number of options, and you want to make sure that if someone is flipping through the channels and stops here, they stay long enough to watch some ads, and you have a satisficing goal, right? Which is you don't want them to flip away, but past that point, you don't really care how much they like it. You don't get any more ad revenue for them liking it more. It just sort of has to be good enough to keep them there instead of flipping to one of the other, 8 options.
But also the entire plot, like, sorry, again, Kriston, you can talk about this more, but like the entire plot sequence of a 20-minute show that had to have like 8 to 9 minutes, of a 30-minute show that had like 8 to 9 minutes of commercials brought into it, and had to have arcs that continually left people wanting to come back and not leave during a commercial break because they wanted to see what happened, is like a really fantabulous like example of like the commercial medium dictating the message like in this very true way. And so you just like have these like, I mean, they just don't exist anymore. My parents, I remember, were like at one point, like I think we were watching like they were flipping through, it was like the 90s or the early 2000s, and we were watching something, and there was some terrible, really kind of bad reality TV show. And my parents were like, TV is such trash right now. And I was taking like this class at Brown on like The Sopranos. And I was like, oh no, like, what are you talking about? TV is so great right now. Like, and I mean, of course, both are true, but like, yeah. Anyway, we're gonna leave it there. Thanks everyone for putting up with my entire self-indulgent day, Dune day.
And thank you all for making me feel comfortable in your. I recognize. I knew I was the outsider, but you didn't make me feel like one.
Very true.
You knew our ways as though you were born to them.
Very good. Excellent job. I was like really a bit.
You can Venmo me that setup.
Yeah. We will be back 56 minutes, 23 hours and 56 minutes from now, 22 hours and 56 minutes from now with Oren Kerr, and which I don't know what he's going to be talking about, but surely it will be spicy and involve a blackboard. Kriston, Julian, thank you again. It was great to see both of you. And until next time, Scott, what do we say?
We can't have fun anymore, but we can have remakes of classics that can be enjoyed for new generations.
That is so true.
That's right.
So true. Let's just keep remaking stuff.